Hello, welcome back to another edition of Rocket's Rambler Garage. We thought we would start off this episode with a review of the whiteboard since we haven't been here for a while. We'll cross off some things that we've done, give you an intro on what we're going to accomplish in this video, or at least hope to, and then get to it. So, last episode, we got the fuel pump done finally. Good one to get out of the way. I don't know if we showed it much, but we did get our throwout bearing in the mail here the other day and pressed it onto its collar. And I'd had a deal out to order the motor mounts and actually the transmission mounts too. Except we didn't put motor mounts even on the list. But we got brand new motor mounts and brand new transmission mounts.
Water pump's already built too. It just needs to get painted with the rest of the motor.
Well, that's why it's in a dashed line. We actually still have to put a gasket on it, spread out the copper washers, because I just stacked all four of them under one stud, and then we have to nut it. Anti-seize the studs and nut it down. So, yes. So, good segue into what we're going to accomplish. Goal for this episode, we're going to get the motor painted. I've been hemming and hawing over how I want to do it, and I still am not completely decided on how I want to deal with the factory markings. So we're going to replicate them, and I free-handed them, but in this case they're clear enough and nice enough that I'm debating whether I want to mask them by taking a Q-tip and a little bit of Vaseline and mask them with Vaseline so the stuff can be cleaned, and then we'll use a white paint pen to replicate them over exactly the same route as the factory employees did, or if I want to take some pinstriping tape and actually mask them with tape. It'll take about the same amount of time either way. Anyway, want to get the motor painted. We don't really have it on the list, but as you know, we've been taking this car apart for 3 months, so we've got a ton of stuff cleaned up, and we're at a point where we've got the engine compartment basically cleaned, the wire harness detailed, engine bay has been waxed, and we're ready to really start putting stuff back in it. So another plan for this weekend is the long-awaited begin to put things back together again. Been taking it apart for 3 months, so it'd be nice to put something back together rather than take it apart, because I think we're all done and tired of taking it apart and degreasing and cleaning stuff. It's a long, tedious process, so it'd be nice to get on to putting it back together. So, list of things to do. Paint motor. Assemble. Ignition. We're going to go back and revisit that here in a minute. We put it back together with points at the end in the last episode. We're going to go back and revisit the ignition. We got to actually assemble probably our differential just to get it out of the damn way, so we got a place to paint the motor. So I think that's going to be one of the things. So I think I'll put assemble diff, and then we got to assemble engine. We got to assemble the engine bay. So I don't know what we're going to do with this. This one was a leftover from the last one, and I don't know if I want to get into trying to do the pan hard rod bushings or not.
I think we should, because it won't take too long.
Yeah. Just put mayhem equals scope creep on the wall somewhere, and we'll sum that last statement up.
Like, you're any better?
Yes, I am.
Whose idea was it to do the rest of this?
Oh, this was your idea. So I'm blaming all this on you.
Total, I probably damn near got more time invested in this between working on it and the video editing.
We still have some bolts and screws we're not quite done with. A lot of stuff's been plated. We got some to passivate. I bought some new screws yesterday for the heater, but I only got through deglossing about half of them last night. I stopped running stuff through the vapor blast cabinet. Oh, which reminds me of one thing. I need you to service the vapor blast cabinet because the rinse tub is like down to sucking up the dust off the bottom, which means the cabinet's got about 5, 6, 7 gallons excess water. So next thing we're gonna do, we're gonna take you over and we're gonna revisit the ignition. All right, so here at the distributor, or disturber as I like to call it, the last episode we'd put this back together with points, strictly because I had bought what I thought was the right ignition module for this, only to find out it fits a Delco, and this is made by a company called Pertonix. Now, I'd kind of, at least for the weekend, given up on trying to do anything with this other than just put points in it and call it good. But there's always a part of me that knows, I mean, this lower section of the distributor is almost always on an engine unique to the engine it's made for. They have to be made together. From about here up, from the bottom of here up, is almost always has some commonality with some other vehicle. And so with that in mind, I kind of went, I just have to believe somebody else uses this distributor. So I got on Pertonix website earlier and bummed around, and I found a part number I kind of liked. So with that, I went on to Pertonix website and I found a stock number that looked like it would probably fit. And then I thought, all right, I'll get busy and call Pertonix and probably spend a couple hours on the telephone on hold waiting for them to talk to me. And I got a really nice gentleman about, 30 seconds in. Didn't take on very long. And so I'm going to start taking this thing apart while I'm talking here. But he asks me, what I'm working on, what I'm attempting to do. And so I tell him, and he's like, so give me the number for it. I give him the number. Many of these come with some sort of a tag on them. Be them, pretty much any brand will have some sort of a tag. This one, and I hadn't given as much thought to it as I should. This says Pertonix, the electric auto light company. Anyway, he goes and says, let me go to my source and see what I can find. And I said, well, you going to your website? And he goes, no, I got a better place than that. And I said, oh, I figured you guys might have the good stuff. So anyway, he takes the number, and I had gone to the Pertonix listing. Well, he goes over to the Autolite listing, and he finds the number on that tag under the Autolite listing. And he says, it's such, and the next thing he asked me is, he goes, is it 6 volt or 12 volt? And I said, well, it's 12 volt. And he goes, negative ground or positive ground? And I said, negative. And he goes, okay. It takes this. Where'd that dang screw I just dropped go? Probably went down in the bottom, and I'm going to have to fish it out somewhere. Pretty much. We go looking and see where that screw went. Yeah, we'll have to turn that upside down and shake it out. So anyway, he gives me the stock number, and I immediately head to their website. Oh, it fell into the top section right there. Even better. And you have to shake it to find it. So it turns out it's exactly the same stock number that I'd looked up myself, which kind of vindicated things. So anyway, this is a 91385LS. It's an Igniter 2. I'll explain that in a minute. And of course it says Chrysler 8-cylinder. Well, yes, that's where I happen to find it too. But this doesn't happen to be a Chrysler product per se. This is going to be fun. I got a little clip here. I almost need my magnifying headlight to see. There's a little tiny clip here that holds the vacuum advance can on, and it is a bugger. I had a dickens of a time installing it. I'm just hoping to drag it off of its moorings, which I managed to do, and not bend it this time, which is even better. So anyway, with that in mind, he goes, I've got one in stock if you want it. And he says, it's on sale. And it's got free shipping and no sales tax. He said, sign me up. So, with that, I had an Igniter 2. Now, quick education for those not familiar with Pertonix electronic ignition modules. They make what's called Igniter 1, 2, and 3. Igniter 1 is points. It basically is an exact drop-in point replacement. It doesn't have any trickery to it at all. It's just straight up points. It uses your stock coil, stock ballast resistor, all that stuff. So you just put it in and place your points. It fits in a distributor. It gets its power to run the module from the coil positive, and then it just connects to the negative side of your coil to run your breaker, basically breaker points at that point. And away you go. Igniter 2 is actually a high output unit. In this case, this one reads the bumps on the point cam itself. So you just clean the grease off the point cam and it reads those bumps. No magnet ring, no nothing. Some of the Igniter 2s do require you to put in something like a magnet ring. Variable dwell in these, so if you put a dwell meter on it at idle, you'll probably pull about maybe 8 or 10 degrees of dwell. They will increase dwell as RPM increases, which is the higher the dwell, the more charge time you get to your coil. They do sense how much energy is being expended or discharged by the condenser, so that you don't have a ton of energy being wasted in the condenser, which keeps from overheating these condensers, which in the old school were pretty large because of that. A lot of Igniter 2s come with a new breaker plate. The old ignition here had an off-center pivot, and it actually moved the points closer and further away from the point cam to change the dwell. This one, they've got a nylon sleeve here, and it actually is made to rotate purely about center, which will make this one a whole lot nicer. The fun part with this new breaker plate, I got to drop it in. There's 3 screw holes on this side for different distributors, and there's 1 on this side. I'll have to drop that in there, and then I got to line the screw holes up and put a screw in there temporarily, because these screws are also your distributor cap hold down. And I want to actually put one in here just to make sure one of them lines up, which it does, which is great. I have a feeling, since I opened this box up last night and looked at this one. This is kind of what I would call a scratch and dent sale model, because these were a little bit bent, like somebody had mounted it and didn't do a very good job of it, and so it didn't set flat. Now I need a knifey that I don't have. Be right back. I gotta get something to open that package. And so getting into more of the differences between Igniter 2 and 3 now. Igniter 3 is a lot of times very similar to Igniter 2, except that Igniter 3, besides having adaptive dwell, Igniter 3 adds in a programmable rev limiter, and it's programmable from 3,000 to about 8 or, about that all the way through. Programmable from about 3 to 8,000 RPM, maybe 9,000 RPM.
It's 9,000.
So if you're building yourself a race car, you can get yourself a programmable rev limiter in there. I'll have to finish setting those when I put the vacuum advance in here, which I believe I'm going to have to rotate around a bunch to get to. I generally, for most of my vehicles, run Igniter 3s just because I really have been setting the programmable rev limiters on my vehicles just in the advent something should go wrong, and as much as anything, it's a hedge against Captain Mayhem over there doing something a little wild and crazy and blowing up my engine because it gets over revved in some evening's mayhem I'm not aware of. Or miss a shift in a manual transmission to do the same thing. So that's been kind of my motivation for this particular setup. I'd love an RPM limiter being a manual transmission, but not happening. This is not your most common distributor, so it's one of those. Take what you can get. So there you go. There is a distributor converted to electronic ignition. On the outside, the only thing you have that's not stock and visible is you've got 2 wires coming out of the distributor instead of 1. And I've even done some to camouflage those, and most likely what I will do is I'll put little sections of heat shrink on this to tie it all together and keep the pieces from, you know, doing that on their way to the coil. And it's all pretty nice and self-contained. It's fairly invisible to most people unless they start looking fairly close. This one, I should point out, uses what Pertonix calls their Igniter 2 coil, which
Flamethrower.
Or flamethrower through 2 coil, which is a real good setup. We've already changed out the coil because with the other module, we figured that was going to be it. But you bypass the ballast resistor. You feed a full 14 volts, which is your nominal power in your electrical system with the engine running and the alternator functioning. You feed a full 14 volts to these. They electronically limit the current through the coil to about 8 amps. But the beauty of it is with adaptive dwell at idle, you only need about 2.5 milliseconds of charge time, but 28 degrees of dwell at idle will give you about 30 milliseconds of charge time on a coil. So you wind up overheating your coil, which is why the old coils are oil filled. It helps aid in that cooling. It gets the heat from the windings to the outside. With this running about 8 degrees of dwell, it won't actually overheat the coil, even though you're pounding 8 amps into it instead of with points your ballast resistor limiting the current to about 2 amps to preserve point life and to not overheat the coil at the lower RPM. So this is actually a real nice setup in that it's kind of set up to preserve parts. Anyway, until we drop this in and do plug wires and everything and the hookup to the coil, the distributor is now converted to electronic ignition. Okay, with that, we're ready to start the differential. You punched those for 3/8 studs, but those are 7/16, so I enlarged them up to 7/16 so they'd fit. We are going to have to take and cut a notch in that gasket for that oil chute to come up through. So let's do this first. Let's take, you go in there and grab a, well actually no, you do the grunt work. I'm just the cleaning guy.
You want me to slide this way, don't you?
Yeah. Don't go crazy. That's enough. Yeah, just remember, I'm just the cleaning guy around here.
I'm the one who cleans up everything.
I don't do a very good job either.
Nice one.
Okay, so
you kind of trapped yourself.
No, I didn't. I need you to come back here and hang on to this so it doesn't fall over. I'm going to use the gasket piece. This holds the seal that goes around the drive shaft. I'm going to use this to push that gasket back. So hang on to the diff. Mark everything alignment wise on the drive shaft. We're going to slip this off. Bearing comes off the front end of the shaft. Whew. Okay. I need a small screwdriver to get that clip off there. Probably going to need one of the little precision ones to start with.
How about we do this? Why don't we try to set that end down onto the concrete floor so you can just tap down? And that way there's less movement from me. How much easier this is?
Haven't got it off yet. Is it moving? Not that it mattered much getting that shaft on and off, but somebody's beat on that with a hammer and mashed, swedged the end of that drive shaft. Whoever was in here before was a little rough on things. Let me go do a little massaging on that. Looks like somebody's already maybe done a little massaging too, to try to fix their faux pas. At minimum, we need the rubber off the outside of it. I can work on getting us a new bearing.
Well, I already remember I already read the number.
Well, that doesn't matter. It also is a fact I don't happen to actually stock one. Okay, so what I'm gonna do here, put a flat file on this. Hit these a little bit. Don't want to hit them much. Don't need to hit them much.
88506. Timken has an 88506, which seems to be pretty similar.
Protecting. Well, it's noisy. It's noisy because the bearings are completely dry right now. There's no grease left in that.
That bearing will be in on the 9th. The other way I reckon it too, even if we don't use it on this, it'll probably fit the 61.
And 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6, they all use the same bearing.
Yeah, so worst case we just have a spare.
What I'm most concerned about, the bearing is held in by 4 bend over tabs.
None of them are bent over particularly well.
Yeah, which is why if you actually spin this,
I know the rubber's off center.
The rubber's off center. What this does is it holds it together while you push the shaft down in the tube. We actually have to put some grease around the inlet of the tube and let this slide the grease down, because this fits inside that tube fairly tight to center that bearing. Since this is a solid shaft of no real diameter, it'll whip inside this tube without a bearing. It'll actually whip a tiny bit as it is, but with the distance involved, it doesn't whip very much. So this was how they set it up. Square, it should mostly drop into place. You may have to tap it with the brass.
Yeah, that's what I need.
It's still. Close. Ooh, very. She's home. Now we gotta slip the keeper ring over it.
Move.
Put it down.
I'm waiting for you to get out of the swing zone before you get bonked.
People in their disassembly techniques. Beyond that, there's a little punch mark right there that lines up with that one. So it goes back on the splines it came off of. Alright. Let's go clean it up. Yeah, see, they put a grease fitting down in there too. Not that you can do any good with it. We should actually put that fitting back in, grease it. Then what I want to put is one of the flat type. They make one that only sticks up about 1/8 of an inch.
And you just put the needle greaser on.
Yeah, you put a needle greaser on it, push the ball bearing in and hit it. Okay, I run this over to the vise. Ugh, that's dirty. Took some 600 grit wetter dry and just wetted this up and run it around and polished out a lot of the nicks and dings and damage in here. So we're actually in pretty good shape right now. So we're going to put a grease gun on here. Put a couple pumps in here.
Keep going.
I'm looking to see how much we've oozed out.
I have a feeling we probably better pump a lot in there.
Well, you don't get much in these. The cross passage is only 3/16 of an inch or so in diameter.
Yeah, considering how nasty that stuff looks.
Somebody probably used black grease. Give it a couple more. That's all it's doing is pumping out here. Okay, I gotta find my little alignment mark. Now, see how much better that's going on? We still gotta put it down on a rag on the floor and tap it on with a brass hammer. But we're not gonna have to be quite as bad as we were the last time where we had to beat the damn thing off. Put your rag down first.
Are you beating that shit?
They've done that on both sides. They hit it with a steel face hammer and beat the crap out of it.
How far down are you going to slide that in? Alright, now, stop, because you're going to put a little profile grease fitting on there and you just stuffed it all the way in with that one.
Assistant, who was so excited about me pushing it through too far, I intentionally pushed it through too far. It'll push back towards the front end as we assemble it, but you need to be able to get your screwdriver in there or a bar or something to lift it and line that shaft up before it goes on the studs, or you'll fight putting it back on. Pick it up higher.
You want me to rotate this at all?
I want you to pick it up higher. Now go to your left. And pick it up higher.
Whoa, tell me how much higher.
You need to pick that up and hang on to those simultaneously.
Yeah, what's the torque spec on these?
Yes. like the torque tube. Filthy dirty.
And then what
If you want to torque them 7/16, should probably torque to about 50, I would imagine.
That's what I was thinking.
Of them.
Yep. I set this to about 52 to take up for the extension.
Now, there's one thing that probably should have been done, but I don't really know what they did at the factory. Should those nuts have all been vapored and then painted or cleared? Were they painted black after it was assembled?
Well, judging by how the fact that the differential is a different color than the torque tube, I probably venture to say those were just left.
Probably true. You know what that means, don't you?
No.
Yes, at some point we should pull those off one at a time.
We can do that.
Or two at a time and go detail them.
No, we can do that when we deal with the rest.
Oh, come on, man. You're killing my scope creep here.
Actually, right, pest equals scope creep.
Okay, I'm going to set the washers together. Set them over here on the table. And then let's do a quick roll this outside. Fog a little paint on those truss rods.
Yep,
All we're trying to do is
all
we're trying to do here is keep these from rusting. All right, so we got the place cleaned up and the motor situated. So next thing we're gonna do is water pump. Now they use a copper washer around the studs.
Permatex this, because this is also Permatex too.
We do better to simply copper coat that. They used copper washers to prevent any stud leakage because these screw right into the water in behind. I'm simply going to put a little Permatex #2 on them to help seal them up in here. The next thing is to deal with the factory markings on the engine block. We did a test by putting a little bit of soapstone, which you use in welding, and it's kind of like a chalk, only it's actually made out of a different type of mineral itself than actual blackboard chalk. Put it on some flat bar, kind of a rough surface like this, and painted over it with some clear so you could see where you'd actually put the marks, and gave a shot at cleaning it off, and it just, the clear just soaked into the soapstone, went down to the metal underneath it and stuck to it and basically coagulated it all together. So there's not going to be any way to really use soapstone on this. So I'm going to break out the two-toning tape that or pinstriping tape I bought. I got a few different widths here. And I'm going to do what I really didn't want to do. I was trying to avoid it because it would take forever to do. But I'm going to have to basically take some very narrow tape. Kind of thinking I'm going to take either this 1/8 inch or the 1/16 inch and literally just go around and mask it off. And then we can peel the tape up later and we'll go fill in the groove left by the tape with the white paint pen. I think I'm going to use 1/8 inch for a lot of it. I don't know that the 1/16 is going to be all that good. I've had pretty good luck with this, and it is flexible, so it will make curves to a degree. And then I'm going to leave a surprise for the video editor, who's going to have to go through and put this all in fast play so you guys don't have to watch the excruciating time lapse of watching me do it in full scale real time. I'm going to put my headlight on because it's going to make seeing the lines a little easier to do. I'm going to have to do it in little pieces probably, and trim as well. It ain't wanting to stick very good either. I'm going to have to push it and hold it down. Yeah, you got to hold it down as you go. As you're curving it, it'll pull right back up again. And I better go get me the X-Acto knife again to cut the ends off.